They say that there is nothing money can't buy, and I suppose that is true also for video game companies, and really any studio in the entertainment industry, you know, when you're talking movies, TV shows, any kind of media. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of video games today are like collaborations, you know, Fortnite, for example. They are made up of a ton of collaborations. I literally just saw today, I am not over-exaggerating, I'm not kidding. They are collaborating with SpongeBob. Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen it all. They've collaborated with the Avengers, Rick and Morty, Mr. Beast. I mean, pretty much anything and everything that you can possibly think of. Call of Duty tries to do that nowadays too, and it is kind of interesting when you think about like how much these video game companies actually make. Because on one hand, yes, they do make a lot of money. I'm seeing that like a couple years ago, for example, Fortnite made 4.4 billion US dollars in just 1 year. But the thing is, you know, kind of on the other hand, you know, that is just revenue. That is what they made just in terms of sales. I suppose that doesn't take into consideration how much they actually spent. My point is that, you know, while video games today, especially the big ones like Fortnite, make a ton of money, it's very obvious that the factor of how much they actually spent to get the final product is very large. I mean, I was talking about collaborations. I'm not even talking about like voice acting, right? Sometimes you've got like big voice actors voicing really big parts in these video games. Even like celebrity collaboration voiceovers, like Call of Duty does that with like their operators, you know, they had like Snoop Dogg and Nicki Minaj in Call of Duty. I can only imagine they pay them a bunch just to, you know, do their little voiceovers for their multiplayer voice prompt type things. And the thing is, a lot of video games will spend a lot of money on stuff like this, even if it's not collaborations. They'll just spend a ton of money on these AAA games that, you know, have pretty good graphics, a decent budget, you know, all that stuff, but then the sales, while may be good for, you know, some smaller games, it just doesn't cut it, and it actually gets to the point where the profit is actually negative. They spent too much money, or at least they spent more money than they actually got. You know, games like Concord or Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, you know, games that end up like that. It's crazy to think of how much money they actually lost. I don't know Concord's numbers, but the Justice League game, I keep seeing the number $200 million in terms of the amount that they lost. Yeah, so it's crazy, you know, this can happen a lot with modern day games. They focus too much on graphics and the perks and the shiny stuff and not so much on the actual game itself. Now, Nintendo is just kind of one of those rare examples where they just don't really seem to play by these rules. It seems that they are always behind in graphics when compared to Xbox and PlayStation, at least in terms of the consoles and their specs, and then just the games themselves. I mean, obviously when you're playing a Mario game, it's not necessarily some crazy high-res, ridiculously specific graphics like, say, Red Dead Redemption 2, but somehow they do good. In fact, great. You know, they just make fantastic products and make probably fantastic profits. So Nintendo actually had an investor Q&A last month, and Shigeru Miyamoto actually talked a bit about this. Now, yeah, this was last month. Sometimes with these things, especially in Japan, that happen. Sometimes it can kind of take a while for American or European audiences to notice them, especially because sometimes with big transcripts like this, sometimes translation can take its time for whatever reason. So Eurogamer just pointed this out with an article. I love Eurogamer, by the way. They pointed this out that in this Q&A, this was mentioned, that Nintendo just has this overall strategy of basically cutting costs significantly in their games while still maintaining a very, very great product. I'm going to link the transcript in the description. It is pretty interesting to read this. There are a lot of good quotes in here. A lot of good things are said. And on the topic of cost reduction, Shigeru Miyamoto says, quote, "In the entertainment business, it is possible to create appealing products based on intriguing ideas without incurring significant costs." He went on to say, "Even in the case of video games with the current technology, it is possible to create fun games with a small number of developers in a short period of time. We believe it is important to not lose sight of this perspective." And then also an executive officer named Shinya Takashi made a pretty interesting comment that I absolutely agree with, especially when you look at kind of indie games these days. He said, quote, "I believe unique titles that are small in scale but worth polishing can be created by expanding on the ideas of a small number of developers rather than spending large sums of money on every game." Yeah, yeah, I think this is great, and overall, again, when you look at Nintendo, this is just something that they always do great. They don't always have the most up-to-date graphics, but, at the end of the day, it really does not matter. I don't think you've ever really been playing a Nintendo game and thought, I'm having a fun time playing Super Mario Odyssey or, the new Legend of Zelda, but I really wish these graphics looked more realistic, or, I really wish I could see, a higher res version of the small bit of dirt that's on Mario's shoes right now. Like, you've never said that before. Because, yeah, on one hand, I get it, good graphics are, good to look at, it's pretty, but on the other hand, it gets to a point, and I feel like we've gotten to that point maybe like 10 years ago, where it just doesn't matter, right? Graphics look realistic, I'd say, as is. And I mean, geez, you look at some modern Nintendo games, I mean, look at like Super Mario Odyssey, or the new Animal Crossing. I mean, don't tell me that you look at that and you think that it doesn't look good. I mean, it looks great. Bottom line is, the thing with Nintendo games that just makes them incredibly unique and incredibly cost efficient, I have to say, is that they just stick with what works. Most of their games are cartoony. They don't spend, a crap load of money just on the graphics. And then at the same time, they don't, rely on crazy celebrity collaborations or product collaborations, very similar to Fortnite. I suppose a small exception, of course, could be Super Smash Bros., but that is pretty much it. Yeah, they don't rely on any of that. A Mario game is not like a Call of Duty where it's gonna, collaborate with Hulk Hogan and the Costco guys. It doesn't do that. Nintendo is just Nintendo. They stick with what works. What you see is what you get, and overall, that means they have much less of a cost than a lot of these AAA games that Microsoft and Sony try to push out. It's probably not much of a secret that Nintendo has been sticking to this strategy, but it is very clear by this new Q&A that Nintendo very much intends to stick with this strategy going forward.